2, 1. All right. Hey guys. Hey, we're on live stream and I'd love to jump in and thank you all for coming, even though we had a slight change of plans. Originally, I had this. And you're wondering, wait, what happened to this comparison? And then as I unboxed everything yesterday, right, getting ready for today's live stream, I opened the box. I'm like, wait, I'm missing stuff. There was no stand, no screws, no remote control, no power cord. Oh, wait, should I check audio? Hey everyone, thanks for coming. Lisa, haven't seen you forever. Matt and Bev, always welcome. Hey Paul, thank you for coming and sharing your Sunday with me. And yes, Daryl, we're going to get into the Q&A as well. But many of you thought that we're going to do this comparison. It is coming. I reached out to Hisense, and either they'll send me a new TV with a new box, or they'll just mail me all the companion accessories. So with that out of the way, what are we talking about today? We are actually talking about this. I thought this would be a great replacement because I was planning a video for this anyway. And speaking of that video, I want to get you guys caught up to where we are, meaning rather than try to muddle my way through it live, I did a little pre-recording for you guys. Check it out. We're going to talk about it, Q&A, and don't forget you can ask me anything. It doesn't have to be about the primary RGB OLED, which I do have, the G5, but it could be about any TV you're thinking of buying. I'll see you on the other side. The LG C-Series is getting the 4-stack primary RGB Tandem OLED, and this changes everything for everyone. And for the first time in years, the C-Series will matter again because, my friends, where there's smoke, there's fire. All signs point to the C-Series finally getting this. Yes, the same 4-stack panel technology that makes the G5 the HDR impact leader and brightest OLED TV ever. And it looks like it's coming to the C6 in 2026. So how did the C-Series go from flagship performer to mid-tier laggard? Well, it happened in 2023. But before that, remember in 2022, C2 G2? Yeah, the G2 had a heatsink, but essentially the C2 was right there. Very similar performance. G2 slightly brighter, but not by much. And the C1 and G1, the G1 had that Evo panel the C1 didn't have. Similarly, slightly brighter, but again, so close that most people did not notice either way. But then in 2023, when the G-Series G3 got the MLA and the C3 did not, that separation in performance was huge. And the gap was pushed even farther when the G4 got the improved MLA. C4 pretty much stayed the same. And this year, with the G5 getting the latest evolution or revolution in W-OLED, the 4-stack primary RGB Tandem OLED, boom, the G5 just took off. And the C5 spinning in place. Yes, they pushed brightness a little harder in SDR, but you know what happened? The green got a little bit worse. The color shifting was not as good as prior years. In other words, you can only do so much with old technology. As you push it harder and harder beyond its ceiling of capability, you start to see the flaws, and the C5 is showing those weaknesses because it's a totally mature technology that cannot be pushed any harder than it is without going to that next step, primary RGB OLED. Now, why would LG Display change tactics suddenly and give the C-Series primary RGB OLED? Well, essentially, in this article in Business Korea, LG Display announced that this is their future, this is their technology. But if you have to wait and ask yourself, if this is their future and this is their technology, right, winning awards and that halo effect trickling down to all their models, unless it's a primary RGB at an affordable model, it doesn't do much for you, right? The G-Series is an exclusively expensive model. You're not going to grow that market very much. The uptick is very small. You cannot turn around your fortunes on an exclusive selection of expensive models. This needs to trickle down to the C-Series, a true mass market TV. But where are the signs that you can make primary RGB cheap enough to sell in the C series? Now we get to the smoking gun in this article on the elect. Solus Advanced Materials is prepping a low-cost green phosphorescent OLED. And here's the big quote. Solus expects to supply materials for 4-stack OLED in low-cost models. I don't know if they were supposed to leak that, because there's no such thing as a low-cost model this year using primary RGB OLED. It's only exclusively in the high-cost model, the G series. Well, a low-cost model would be either the C series or maybe even the B series, and that's key. So they are preparing a low-cost range of OLED TVs, C series, maybe even B series, but for sure it got to start with a C series, which will receive this cheaper green phosphorescent OLED chemical for that 4-stack primary RGB OLED that's in the expansion phase. What do I mean by expansion phase? Well, another article cites that LG Display got financing to invest mucho money by expanding into production of a lower cost primary RGB OLED. You not only supply LG Electronics with a C and B series driven by this latest Halo technology, but Samsung will buy it up. Remember, because of W-OLED from LG Display, Samsung has bought enough, sold enough, and surpassed LG's OLED sales in North America. You don't think Samsung's like, wait, you have primary RGB OLED that may be cheaper than our QD-OLED? You don't think Samsung's going to say, wait, maybe next year's S90 series should use more affordable primary RGB OLED, and we'll leave QD-OLED for the S95 series. Already the rest of the world is getting S90F using weak W-OLED. Well, with primary RGB OLED that's more affordable, they may just replace all QD-OLED in the S90F series with this lower, cheaper primary RGB OLED that would outperform the current W-OLED used in the rest of the world for the S90F. I know many of you are complaining, oh no, what happened to the affordable S90 series of QD-OLED? Well, comment below. Do you think this is a walk backwards if it's primary RGB OLED? A lot of people are trending towards larger and larger TVs, even if they don't go to 100 inches. A 75-inch mini-LED right now, $1,200, maybe less, like QM6K is under $1,000 for a 75-inch mini-LED. The least expensive 77-inch B4, definitely dimmer, and a lot of people want that brightness, but even the B4 is like twice as much at around $1,500, $1,400, right? So this is a price competition as well. OLED image quality is great, but it's so close now to mini-LED. I know many of you say, oh, it's not close at all. The reality is the non-enthusiast will not be able to really tell the difference unless they're in a critical viewing environment. They're at Best Buy, they're at a Costco, they're going to see a 75, 85-inch mini-LED and they're going to say, oh wow, that looks pretty good. So with that in mind, LG needs to find a way to drop the prices of a quality OLED technology, and primary RGB OLED is the way to do it. Bookmark this, and if I'm wrong, I'll eat pasta with processed meats.
Is Fomo really going to join us for pasta?
Let's see him FOMO this.
Oh, I gotta love those AIs. How's everyone doing? And well, let's talk about this, right? I honestly was very surprised that Solus leaked that. I don't think they intended to, because it's very obvious that there's no mention of a low-cost primary RGB OLED, right? I mean, obviously, they're going to do it. The question is when, and based on what I'm seeing, this has been in development for a while. They need a low-cost primary RGB. It's a big hit. Everywhere LG goes, they present it, they're getting awards. SID gave them this innovation award. They're pretty excited, but again, if they keep it at the exclusively flagship level, no one's going to buy it, and for sure they're going to go broke just putting it there. And so they're developing ways to make it less expensive. I think it's going to be on the C6. I'm pretty certain it is. And if I am wrong, you're going to see me eat pasta at CES. And you know, Brian's going to laugh and love it, and we'll do it live, right? So I'll be eating carbonara, guanciale, right, at one of the various restaurants. You'll see me choke on gluten and carbs. Like, no, I'm dying. Oh, to suffer that way. But hey, how's everyone doing? And already got a super chat. Thank you, Dennis Perez. So you guys come on by, ask any questions you want, any TV. We're going to talk about why I think the LG C6, if you're going to get a C5, you might as well wait. Is it going to be expensive? More expensive? It may be slightly more expensive, but ultimately their goal is to beat the S90 series, which is kicking their butts the last 3 years, right? The S90 series. And by doing this, it allows them to compete again. Okay, thank you, Dennis, for that super chat. Nice update, FOMO. Hey, I'm here to please, and spending Sunday with you guys is going to be a pleasure. Can't wait to hear your questions. All right. Uh, AI jokes. What software did you use? Oh, I used the new VO3 Gemini, right? So I couldn't resist. I thought they did a great job. I saw the samples. I go, you know what? Let's play with that. So yeah, VO3, VEO, the number 3, Flow is the name of the Gemini software. So there you have it. And Lisa, oh, it's good to see you, girl. Will the low-cost primary RGB OLED be of the same quality as the G5? We don't know. It could even be better. Just because the cost is less really doesn't mean anything as far as I'm concerned. As you guys saw, it's all about software. It's all about who's doing the tuning and everything. So if anything, it could even be a match. So don't get too caught up in the price of how they get to primary RGB. The key is that architecture, right? First, this approach is definitely cheaper than MLA. So already they're saving money, getting brighter, and I've been watching the G5 and I'm telling you, I like it more and more. With the recent update, it looks great. And the color accuracy, I think it's actually fine. Well, better than my Bravia 8 Mark II. That thing is a magenta beast. I think I'm going to have to get that thing calibrated at some point. But at the shootout, I'm going to talk to Dwayne about that and see if he's seeing the same thing on the Bravia 8. And if he does, it feels like maybe that's a Bravia 8 tuning. It's the color science we talk about. Every TV has a certain approach to how they do color. Some TVs are very dedicated to just D62 white point, which I think Samsung and LG is very focused on. However, like this year's C5, man, totally off. Like out of the box, just way too green, just crazy. Not, and I think it's panel lottery. Some people aren't seeing that. Some people are seeing other things, I guess. So it definitely depends on, well, I have to say the C5 panel lottery this year is pretty bad. It's all over the place. I saw people with a C5 with a terrible near black red shift. Like, what is this, a TCL TV? And now this was before the software update, so hopefully the update fixed that for them. But yeah, this year's, for whatever reason, you would assume with a mature W-OLED technology, nothing would change. But one thing did change. Like I said in the preview, the intro video, the LG pushed this W-OLED a bit too hard. To hit those brightness and SDR, I think they overdid the green, and that's affecting the TV. And once you accurately bring it down to what it should be, it may not be as bright as people think, but you know, we saw the ratings review and it's still pretty bright, but how long does that last, right? It's like a transitional brightness, then it goes back down. So I don't know how useful that is. I think LG was trying a little bit too hard. Just let the C series be. It is what it is. Without anything further, you're going to really blow it up in terms of, it's like a 4-cylinder engine. I know, car metaphors, but there's only so much turbo PSI you could force into an engine before the engine just pops, right? And we're at that point with W-OLED. I think it's great, but look at what Sony has done with the Bravia 8. Not this year, but last year. W-OLED, it looks fine. It looks actually pretty good, and they don't want to push it any harder. They think this is it. It's not going to get any brighter. If we do anything more to it to improve its performance, it's going to look worse. So the Bravia 8, in my opinion, is as hard as you can push it while preserving everything that's good about it. LG is pushing it a little bit harder, right? It's kind of like that super turboed up car that may or may not work in 6 months, right? But they're just trying to do what they can. And so it really depends on your approach. When you buy a TV, do you want to push that technology as hard as you can? Like a lot of you asked me, hey, the S90F, which I love, editor's choice, my last video, and you're like, wait, can I get into the menu setting, right, the service menu, and make it like the S95F? I think they shut that down because not so much that it would force the panel into a place of less reliability, but rather if it's the same panel as the S95F, assuming it is, shouldn't be an issue. The issue would be though if it's not using the same panel, right? If it's using last year's panel, pushing it beyond what it's supposed to do to match this year's 4th gen QD-OLED panel would be an issue because remember, keep in mind the S90F easily matched last year's 3rd gen S95D. So I know at least it's last year's panel performing just like it should on the S95D. Whether it's this year's panel, unlikely because it doesn't have to be, right? And I'm sure they got a bunch of spare panels from last year. They'll stick on the S90F, but maybe not enough to distribute to the rest of the world. So the US gets what's left, S90F. When it sells out, but not enough to supply everyone else with this 3rd gen QD-OLED from last year. So that's my guess why the rest of the world does not get QD-OLED on the S90F, and everyone else gets this weaker W-OLED, not even Primary RGB, and the performance drop is significant in my opinion. Okay, so MLA is too expensive. It's dead. It is. I think many analysts have already concluded that MLA, effective as it is, it's just way too expensive to implement. And so the primary RGB definitely saved them a lot of money to get to the performance point, which ends up being better in many ways than the G4. So yeah, I don't think we'll be seeing MLA back anytime soon until we've exhausted what primary RGB OLED can do. And that might be 2 or 3 generations down. And I know they have other developments in place. So the fear was that LG Display did not have enough cash to do this sort of focus on getting more of this high technology stuff into the lower end because you have to retool and get this new cheaper chemical, and they got financing. So boom, it's there for them, and the government has helped them subsidize, right? So if they agree to turn the Paju plant and expand more OLED production, a lot more or better for small devices, tablets and iPhones or smartphones, but then add some lines for the larger panels like primary RGB OLED, then the government's going to subsidize tax breaks, whatever it is, right? So LG Display has something happening that's pretty good now in terms of their cash position. I'm very happy. The question is, though, what about the other brands? Because LG Display suddenly has this very compelling technology that I think is excellent. For HDR impact, this thing is a bomb. I love it. Wait, is a bomb the right word? This thing is killer. I love it. And so once firmware catches up, right, the software catches up with the ceiling of performance of this panel technology, by the end of the year, this thing is going to be a beast. And don't forget, shootout coming up next month, July 12th. We're going to see the Panasonic Z95B using the same technology. Could they tune it better? So yes, very exciting. And oh, another super chat, Dennis Perez, thank you, my friend. Going from a 65-inch S90D to the 85-inch QN90D, and QN90D 1250. I think the QN90D is the last of the good stuff from Samsung. The QN90F this year, we're talking about the Neo QLED, they're struggling to make it as good as last year. Even though the specs and the hardware is a bump up, the software is just not quite there. So the size immersion, I think it's worth it for you. 1250 is a great price, by the way. 1250, oh my gosh. This is the same price as an 85-inch QM6K. I would choose a QN90D over the QM6K 85-inch all day long. It is a tier or 2, maybe 3, above the QM6K. So yeah, good upgrade. Immersion especially. It's going to be great. Great. Goodbye. Goodbye. A goodbye, not goodbye. Okay, Christopher, question. Stop the FOMO. Since my U8H is dying, patches of dark blue and purple spreading. Oh, that's terrible. What more upscale Google TV would you buy if getting back $990 from Geek Squad cash and obviously giving up some specs? I would go with the QM6K. 85 inches. What was it 85 inches? It's under 1,000. It's like $999 right now for the 85-inch QM6K, I think. So that's, or maybe just above 1,000. The QM6K is a solid, large TV for just basic TV watching with some HDR. I feel comfortable with that. They did a great job this year. So yeah, 990 should just fit that budget. Let me know what you end up buying. And why not bring MLA to the C series? Yeah, it's just way too expensive. It's too expensive for the G series. I don't think people realize that. I mean, MLA is kind of like over-engineered to get to a certain objective, but it was so expensive to get that objective. They're like, we can't scale this up. There's no way to get it cheaper, right? To place individual meta lens, right? Each of these little lenses over a pixel, there's no way to make it cheap, right? At least with chemistry, you could get cheaper chemicals from Solus or whoever, maybe inkjet printed. I mean, there are so many ways you can kind of get the chemicals down cheaper, maybe reduce waste, better yields. But MLA, it's what it is. It's just expensive, these tiny little lenses. There's no way. They could not project a world where MLA could get cheap enough to be spread beyond anything other than the G series. Unlike the primary RGB OLED stack, that architecture allows them to scale more cheaply, right? So I think that is a genius move by them that will work. Oh yeah, here's a good comment. So the QM6K Costco edition is a glossy panel. Plus or minus, I can tell you that it's less expensive because it's glossy. Now, some of you don't care. You want the semi-gloss, you're good with it. I'll tell you this, Brian detests the Costco version. He said the glare on it, he didn't realize the glare was so obvious. I mean, there's anti-glare, but he's like, okay, I will tell my people to get the normal QM6K for an extra 100 or 200 or whatever is at Best Buy. He feels that the matte anti-reflective coating is definitely worth it. Any losses is definitely offset by the glare that's gone, right? So just keep that in mind. Brian, when he was at Costco, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So when I saw it, I wasn't looking for glare. I didn't even know there was a difference, frankly. Because I was walking by, oh, that looks great. That looks great. I'm going to go back and look at it now. But Brian's like, no, man, that glare is just, I'm so used to better glare handling. And that glossy panel on the Costco edition, just make sure you have light control. End of story. Great price, light control, done. But if you have lots of windows around you, get the Best Buy version. And you're not even getting that Costco warranty. You're still getting the 60-day return, I think. But the warranty now is an extra cost. So you still pay a few hundred to get 4 or 5 years. It's not part of that purchase price. So let me know in your region if it is. But here in Southern California, I checked the Costco and there was a price list of all the extended warranty prices. Like, wait a minute, it's not part of the price. So if you're going to do that, might as well just get a Best Buy and do the same thing with the Geek Squad. I think the cost is very similar. But yeah, let me know if you guys prefer the glossy Costco version versus the matte anti-glare version. At least you have options, and that's what I like. Okay. Oh, here's a great one, iCipher. I could not agree with you more. This is the news I needed to decide. I'm going to pass on the G5 and wait for the C6. Absolutely. If you need any reason or excuse to wait, this is a great one because at the end of the day, no matter what happens in 2026, I'll tell you that the improvements that's incremental every year, it just gets better and the prices will always be more competitive. So the C6 is going to be oh, LG has to take advantage of the hype behind primary RGB OLED. They cannot let this sit, right? And I now understand why MLA never got passed down to the C6. It couldn't trickle down. The pricing wasn't there. But with this, the green, right, like the green theme, the pricing is there. Yeah, that's what I would do. If my budget is C series, which is like around 2,000, maybe just above 2,000, but that's definitely not G series money, hold off and see what happens. No doubt. Tanvir, will phosphorescent blue be a part of 2026? In limited devices that start small. So possibly yes, but not on TVs. They still need to put it on iPhones, smartphones, and the like. And the reason is it'll be expensive to start, and on a smaller screen, that expense doesn't feel like it's a huge expense, right? I mean, hey, $1,500 iPhone or Samsung Galaxy, oh, it's an extra $50. No one blinks an eye. But on a TV of that size with that blue, oh, you know, this it's not there yet. And they want to see what the lifetime is like on a small scale first, or rather on a small phone first, right? Because people on the phone, they're not pushing dynamic mode, vivid mode, right? They're just using it normally, and the phone can kind of adjust the brightness and you wouldn't even notice because it's so small. So I definitely feel that phosphorescent blue, when implemented, definitely on the smallest things first. Watch, device, small devices, and then if that works out, tablets and notebook screens. If that works out, then TVs. So I think the earliest we'll see it on a TV, let's see, 2026 small devices, 2027 slightly larger devices, maybe monitor screens, maybe. So I'd say 2028. I'm pushing it out to 2028. But let me know if you disagree, but I just don't think that the cost and the longevity and all that stuff is going to be there. Because people keep their TVs for 5 years at least, right? I think that's the average right now. A lot of people keep their phones for 2 or 3 years and they're thinking, okay, with a high turnover rate of smaller devices, we can make a mistake and people won't care as much. And if I miss your questions, just comment and keep on asking because you guys are just eagerly commenting. Like Tom, I'm eagerly awaiting for the Panasonic Z95B, as am I. So oh, well, if you guys don't remember, so remember when Amazon had that crazy price drop? I'd say it was in May, and it was obviously a mistake, but they haven't canceled it yet, right? I think it was like, what, $1,500, something crazy. It's supposed to launch at $2,400. Whatever the G6 price, or G6, G5, whatever the G5 price is right now, the Panasonic's going to launch within $100 of that, right? So they had instead on Amazon, a 65-inch was like $1,600, something really insanely cheap. I mean, it's still expensive, but not G5 pricing. And so I immediately bought it, locked it in, and then Panasonic reached out to me and they're like, that was not correct. I'm like, oh, well, you know what? Amazon did take it down, and so we'll see if it delivers. So it hasn't been canceled yet, but maybe on the day of shipment, it'll say canceled, but we'll see. It's supposed to ship on the 26th. So maybe next Saturday, it'll be a different live stream. Can't wait. All right. Many people are waiting for this, as am I. I'm still waiting for the direct 65-inch QM8K versus Bravia 9. So I still have the QM8K over there, but it's an 85-inch. And I could not get the 85-inch Bravia 9. There's just none available from Sony. So I have the 65-inch Bravia 9, and I told TCL I need to swap. Like, done, and then suddenly everyone went on vacation. So the people that were supposed to do it can't get a hold of anyone at TCL, but they will swap it as soon as the team comes back from vacay. I'm hoping to get the swap sometime next week. So everything is happening sometime next week, maybe within the next 10 days. So as soon as I get that 65-inch in, that will be one of my live streams, first live streams. Either if the Z95B comes in first, Z95B, G5, and Bravia 8 Mark II. I don't have the S95F yet. Samsung is sending that. They're going to pick up the S90F and get me the S95F. So that'd be a great four-way teaser, an appetizer of sorts for the shootout. We would have the Bravia 8 Mark II, the Panasonic, Samsung S95F, and G5. So I'll play with it uncalibrated at the shootout, thoroughly calibrated. And so we'll see who wins what. And then eventually, either just before that or right after that, we'll have the QM8K versus Bravia 9 comparison as well. All right. And Pete, they don't make these TVs anymore. Fomo, I had my Sony television for 16 years and it's still working great. Dude, I had a Trinitron Vega sitting in the garage, a 32-inch, right? The one with the cool speakers and everything, for 20 years, just sitting there. And I thought, oh, does this thing still work? I turned it on. Oh, it works. Boom. Put it on Craigslist. It was gone in 72 hours. And it was so heavy. It came with a matching stand. I was like, wow, did I just sell an antique piece there? But it was just, I forgot it was even there in the garage. So yeah, I agree with you. They don't make TVs like that anymore for sure. And Mishkath asks, so first, is it going to be inkjet printed RGB OLED or inkjet printed RGB oxide OLED for TV display panels, and when? What about Samsung and Sony? Will they adopt this or will they continue with next gen QD OLED, which is better? Okay, so lots of things to unpack here. First of all, inkjet printed is a completely different process. It's a great process. The question is, can inkjet printed be applied to what LG is doing? Remember, RGB OLED, so there are two types. You got the one that's on the iPad Pro, right? The RGB, I'm going to call it Tandem OLED. That's not white subpixel. That is direct view RGB OLED, right? It's brighter, more saturated, just better luminance. It is a superior image quality. However, the primary RGB OLED, Tandem OLED, is a completely different technology using white subpixels. So inkjet printed applied to what they're doing with Apple would probably be the first step, but it's so different in terms of everything, right? The architecture, the layout, it does not translate to what they will do for TVs. Doesn't mean they won't, because inkjet printed is a lot cheaper than micro LED, right? It's cheaper to inkjet print. It's much cheaper because the yields, there's less waste. So even if the yield is lower or should be slightly higher, but there's less chemical waste, so there's less money wasted, and so it should be more cost efficient once you scale up. So LG Display definitely wants to go to inkjet printed. I'm sure they're trying to figure out how to do that though, because the white subpixel is what saves the TV from burning. I mean, that's why they use it. Like, ask yourself, why are they using white subpixel at all? It gets the TV brighter without jeopardizing the lifetime. Whereas direct view RGB OLEDs that's used on your smartphones and tablets and watches or whatnot, those are less durable, unfortunately. And so as it gets hotter, those will burn in more easily. And LG's solution was to introduce the white subpixel. Gets bright, less hot, but you lose color saturation, and most people accept it because it's still OLED. So keep in mind, LG Display has to balance these things, right? And Samsung QD OLED, completely different. They use mostly blue and green as the energy source. And then they have quantum dots. That is a color converting layer, unlike the LG Display. W-OLED, which uses a color filter, which again takes away some brightness, and you lose a little bit of this, that, the other. The QD-OLED is more direct emissive to your eyes, even more so, and is that one subject to inkjet printing? So the QD part definitely is. And this is why people are so hopeful for, what are they calling it now? QDEL or nano LED, whatever that is, which is quantum dot directly being the emitter, not just a passive color converter like on QD-OLED. Get rid of the OLED, and the QD itself is the emitter, replacing the OLED, individual red, green, and blue quantum dots that's energized and it does all the work. Those can be inkjet printed, and the cost savings, once you figure everything out, should be huge. And it's inorganic, so burn-in is not an issue. How far are we away from that? Maybe 5 years. That is where Samsung is going. So for them, we already know quantum dot OLED is well, as all things, it's a transitional technology, right? Maybe for another 5 years. And then they're going to replace it with nano LED, which is their way of terming or trademarking QDEL. That is where they think things will be. Micro LED in the short term looks exciting, but no one's figured out how to scale it cheaply. It's still way too expensive. That pick and place is just a terrible solution, not scalable. Yields are bad, very expensive, so forth and so forth. Inkjet printed, much cheaper. And so any solution for future technologies will be inkjet printed. So back to your theme, definitely LG Display is looking into it. How hard is it to get there? Well, that's why they have this billions or hundreds of millions of dollars in investment to get to a point where can we do inkjet printed for TVs? Now, where that is, we don't know. Obviously, they're keeping it close to the vest because it's top secret, but never know. Sometimes a supplier leaks something out and suddenly, oh, I see what you're doing. And we have Bravia 10 hopes. Bravia 10 is our term for next year's Sony flagship, the RGB LED, to replace MiniLED, right? It's still an LCD TV, but we think it's going to be called the Bravia 10. Maybe it's going to be called the Bravia 11 or the Bravia X. Will it cost 10,000? Yeah, I'm laughing because I think 10,000 would be considered cheap unless it's a 75 inch. Maybe $10,000 is a 75 inch, but I think the 85, the 98 inch is going to be definitely over 10,000. But yeah, well, first generation, right? Remember the Z9D, how expensive that was, and look how cheap MiniLED TVs are now today. You got a C4 waiting for the C6. Yeah, might as well have you. I mean, if you have a TV to watch, or just get any mini LED TV. Go to Costco, get yourself a QM6K 75 inch, and then wait around. Right? It's a fine TV to hold off, and it's it's under $1,000. Or get a $300 TCL. It doesn't matter. Just get something to hold you until we see what the specs for the C6 is going to be. I love it. Hey, good day to you, Habs fan. And if I miss a question, just throw it out. Let's have fun. Where can one purchase a VHS player or DVD recorder? eBay. Yes, because the days of those old mom and pop radio stores are gone. It is now turned to an eBay store. But yeah, you got to go to eBay. That's where I would go. And 10,000. No, it's going to be over 10,000. Yeah, no, 10,000 I think would be considered cheap. Well, let's talk about this. Right now, as we speak, Samsung is in the middle of producing their 115-inch RGB MicroLED, which is essentially similar technology, right? It's RGB MiniLED or Sony's RGB LED, but it's 115 inches. So we know that one's going to be way over 10,000. What are the predictions? I'm predicting maybe 25,000, but some are predicting even higher. But I think a 115-inch groundbreaking new technology. Now, for perspective, Hisense's version of this 115 RGB mini LED was released in China for like what, 15,000? So you have some context. So if the Hisense in China is around 15,000 or maybe even a little bit less, depending on the conversion, what would the Samsung be? And that's why I'm predicting 25. Makes sense. They would be almost twice as much. But 3 years from now, prices will definitely drop. This is all new technology, so hold off. First adopters, of course, you got money, go for it. But everyone else, don't rush to it. It'll get better and cheaper. And Zakal asks, hey, Fomo, do you really think LG will call it C6? We already got the C6 2016. They could call it something else, right? Let's see. The B is already taken. D, I mean, there's between C and G, you got a few letters left, right? You got a D6, so maybe the C6 continues to be W-OLED and it's called a D6, right? They're introducing something that's not as good as the G series. Now, I'm making this up. Who knows what's going to be called E6 for all we know. But if it's not a C6 primary RGB, I still have to eat the pasta. Come on. I'll be a sticker for the rules. I'll eat the carbonara. So Liverpool, this is, and let me explain to you why. So in the UK, returning of TV is a bit unusual for us. Usually, you'd only be able to return it if there's a fault or a significant problem, not a change of heart. That said, we do get a 5-year warranty free. I love that last part, but I guess Americans are a finicky crop of people. We can return almost anything as long as, well, let's talk about electronics. Like with clothes, as long as the labels are still there, you could actually return it. But with electronics, depending on the retailer, Best Buy gives you 60 days if you're a member of their Total Tech, which is like $100 or $200 a year. But if you're not a member, you still got 30 days. And even then, some things you have 14 days to return. For example, you can return a smartphone. You buy it, don't open the box, you can return it, no charge. You open the box, they might take a 7% restocking fee. Still got 14 days to return it. And other things, you could return it, no restocking fee. So Best Buy, Costco is even more generous with its return policy. So why do they do it? So retailers have discovered that, and Amazon is one of those retailers, a return policy gives people a peace of mind that draws the sales. And so it's the weighing of the cost. The cost of return balanced against the drawing of more purchases. They're like, you know what? This actually works out. If you take away the cost of all the returns with all the increased revenues, net, it's still makes them a lot of money. And of course, they're now with AI, they can easily identify those who are quote unquote returning, but they're doing it a bit too much. And so, boom, just ban them. It's okay. Lose 5% of those people and you're good to go. The people who use their return policy judiciously, right? They do it ethically, meaning, oh, wow, this is not what I expected, which is enough to return it, not as, for a living. You buy it and then you wear it, you play with it for like 29 days, and on the 30th day you return it. At some point they're going to stop you. But it's the American way, just returning stuff. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's just how we do it. Oh no, this is hopefully not the C6II. Oh, touche, touche. I love that. I bet you Sony has already trademarked the II. Oh my God. Who returns their underwear and milk to Walmart? I'm not buying at Walmart now. I normally don't, but CJ McLemore's like, oh, Walmart, people return their underwear and their milk. That's it. I'm not buying at Walmart anymore after that comment. You guys just destroying its reputation. Hey, Fomo, is the new LG OLED technology good enough yet to justify waiting for the C6? Honestly, what is your use case, right? So we're having fun with just raising the performance level, but let's be real for a second here. I have the G5, right? This is the very good flagship level primary RGB OLED, not a cheaper version. And I love using Colombo. If you're watching Colombo, the C1 will look just like the G5 if you don't blast the G5 to blind you, right? But if you're watching it at, let's say, 200 nits, C1, C2, C3, C4, they could easily do SDR at 200 nits, no problem. There's no specular highlights, it's SDR. Old TV shows, news, whatever, it will look just like the G5. It's SDR, it's Rec 709. There's nothing, there's no color that goes into wide gamut. It works the same. So it goes back to your question, justify waiting. So Habs, if you are just watching news, sports, just basic streaming, no HDR, and you're in a light-controlled room, a C2, C3, C4, there's QM6K, for heaven's sake, right? No need to wait for a C6. But if you are those sticklers, ratings, myself, where you find a little bit of fault with everything, right? For me, specular highlights, tone mapping, at 4,000 nits, can I still see the color gradient? Yes, that's the guy you are, or the gal you are. Wait for the C6 because movies and content and gaming, I mean, the gamers, they know it's in B2 2020 and they're hitting really bright specular highlights. They want to see all of that. Now, the one thing that I think should be improved on the C6 that was on the G5, uniformity. A primary RGB OLED. I think it helped with some of that color shift. It was terrible on the G2. And the G3 wasn't that much better, and the G1 was really bad. We had the green, gray color, vertical banding issues with the color. If you're off angle, you got the pink tint, then you got the green tint. Horrible, right? I think it got better with MLA, and RGB looks like it's still okay. And I'm hoping this translates to the C6. So maybe uniformity could be better, but a lot of that could be the W-OLED, but a lot of that could be the software where they need to just offset those issues at the factory. Either way, those are things that could be fixed with primary RGB OLED, or it could be worse, depending on how LG approaches it. But so use case. More often than not, news, old TV shows, streaming that's not HDR, don't wait. Just get something, get an OLED that's on sale, and you'll be fine. But if you're looking to experiment with just high quality HDR that really pushes the peak brightness, right? Then Jennifer Gala stuff, then yeah, it'll be worth waiting because it will definitely outperform the C5 if primary RGB OLED is used. Mako says it's not easy to change the TV set after 30 days. Yeah, a lot of retailers, even the US. I mean, but you should know within 2 weeks if you like it or don't, right? Ah, interesting. Jason. Okay, so I had the X90L, loved it. I do not yet have the Bravia 5. So I saw some of the numbers. Fomo, what do you think about the Sony X90L outperforming the Bravia 5 per ratings test? Not a good look. I don't know what to tell you. It's not a good look for Sony, but it always comes down to context. I see the specs, I see the numbers. Okay, it's for me, it's always real content. How the TVs perform with patterns are completely different than how they perform with real content. This is not to say it won't outperform it in real content either, but the X90L is a great TV. When I had it against the QM8K 2 years ago, the X90L in most content looked the same. It was when you hit the bright HDR with difficult contrasting scenes, that's when the QM8K kind of took the lead, but then the X90L had better skin tones, and near black, it was slightly better. The other one was crushing, the Sony was a little bit lifted, right? You choose your poison. But ultimately, once the X90L dropped in price, boom, that's when you get it. Because at the time when it was launched, it was a bit too expensive. And that's kind of like a Sony thing, right? At launch, always too expensive. So it does surprise me that the Bravia 5 did not do as well. As a matter of fact, I thought the Bravia 5 would do way better. So now I suspect the 98-inch Bravia 5, speculation, should do a lot better with MiniLED. It should be able to get brighter because its efficiency. Not having MiniLED at that size takes up a lot of energy. With MiniLED, the Bravia 5 should hit brightness levels at a lower energy consumption. So I think the Bravia 5 98-inch would be the TV to get more dimming zones, MiniLED, 98-inch size. I think that's when you take full advantage of all of that. But at 65 inches, yeah, I don't know what happened. I'm going to have to talk to Sony. Hey, what's up, guys? I haven't done any in-depth comparisons with the Bravia 5. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen it since Japan. And when they brought it out, I'm like, why am I looking at this again? Because it was so outclassed by the RGB LED and the Bravia 9 and even the Bravia 7. I had no interest in looking at the Bravia 5. So at some point, I'll take a look at it and I'll tell you guys what my thoughts are. Okay, hey, Plasma. Test patterns are very important to determine how TVs will perform. Okay, so this is a great way to introduce test patterns for shootout purposes and all that. And I'm going to tell you again, this is why context is so important. Test patterns represent an absolute scale that all TVs can be judged against, right? So at the shootout, we run test patterns. And test patterns are essential to identify for contrast, for example, the grayscale. You have absolute black, where there is zero light, right? There's no light coming out. And then you have one step up from that, right? Just above black, and then 2 steps and 3 steps. You need a pattern to know your 1 step, 2 or 3 step, and then you can compare the TV. And then you look, oh, this TV does better in this pattern for contrast, right? So let's say for the sake of argument, because this has happened before. You got the LG and you have the QD-OLED, right? Just pick one. We'll pick the Sony QD-OLED because this is how Sony beat LG the last 2 years. The LG, black is black, Sony, black is black. But then when you got to the first and second step, the LG was still black. It wasn't until the third step that would jump up to that right level, whereas the Sony had those gradients in there. And so those 2 steps, that's how it lost, right? And so you would assume that in real content, it translates into that, right? You're going to have black crushing and so forth. But what if in real content, the Sony, I'm making this up, but however the image processing is, what if the Sony starts to crush the blacks? Then you're like, wait, what happened? On this pattern, it did so well. And that's why I say pattern is one thing. Real content, there's so much happening. You got bright lights up here. You got this here. You got that there. The TV has to take all of that into consideration because it needs to hit that specular highlight in HDR, but it takes a lot of energy because that entire panel only has so much energy, right? Is there enough left to do whatever it needs to do over here? Maybe the processing is off, and suddenly you're like, wait, there should be more shadow detail. Why is it crushed? On the reference monitor, though, you see it. I go, wait, there's something here, but on TV it isn't. And so for me, definitely test patterns serve a purpose because it gives you an absolute scale. The problem is it does not translate to real content. And plasma TV gaming, you are a gamer. When you play a game, whatever you see in the test pattern, there's no guarantee that same level of luminance translates to your game. No guarantee at all, because tone mapping is an algorithm. It's a software that decides, we know on that pattern we could hit 500 nits in red. But in this scene, we will choose not to. We're going to only hit 200 nits because there's 800 nits happening here and 1,000 nits over there, and there's 5,000 nits of brightness up there. So this red is going to go way down. So even though that red is supposed to be 500 nits, in the scene, it isn't. But then on the let's say G6, why does the red look brighter in the G6? Because the G6 has a different technology. The white subpixel allows it to hit that 4,000 nits bright, but uses less energy because it's a white subpixel. That means it has some energy left to hit that red a little bit harder. Not to the accurate level of 500 nits, but maybe a little bit brighter than the QD-OLED. And so on an actual luminance scale, where QD-OLED, because it could put all its energy into that red luminance, will hit this, and the G5 can only go up to here. In a real scene, this is enough to beat the QD-OLED that only managed to go up to here, because this QD-OLED may not have a heatsink, it may not have a large enough PSU, and so there's so much happening in a real scene that a test pattern simply cannot reflect, but it does reflect the absolute performance capability of that single red color. And so for me, I've seen this way too many times where all the measurements are in a white window. How often do you guys watch bright white windows? Never. And yet people always come to me, hey, they measured this TV, 10% window, 5,000 nits. I go, dude, it's a 10% white window. What does it matter? It's 5,000 nits in white. How many scenes do you see white and 10,000 nit? The minute you add yellow, the TV drops to maybe 800 nits, and that's the key. So test patterns are useful, but you have to use it with that context in mind. And that's why, and you can ask Classy about this, we use it just to see how the TVs could do on the test pattern, but we no longer rely on it as a determining factor of whether or not you should ever buy a TV. You have to see the tone mapping, how much energy is available to the panel. All of that is important. And so at the end of the day, it's all about scenes, real scenes, right? And some real scenes are different than others. So that's why I try to, different movies, different scenes. I love that Jennifer Gala creates new scenes all the time. So yeah, now white clipping, same thing, right? If there's not enough energy available, it's going to clip earlier. People don't realize TV's energy consumption and the regulations worldwide limits how bright they can get a TV. The TV may be able to handle more, but that's why they call it ABL, right? Automatic brightness limiter, not only to protect the panel, but to keep it within operating energy levels. This is not like a GPU where you could blow that GPU 5,000 watts, no one cares, get a larger PSU. TV's PSU is controlled. You cannot replace that PSU with a larger PSU. You cannot push it beyond what the power board has limited. And so given a finite energy available to the entire screen, every TV maker has to decide within that finite 1,000 watts or 800 watts, whatever is available, how do we play with the colors? How do we tone map so that it adds up to 800 nits or 1,000 nits, or rather watts, 800 watts or 1,000 watts. It adds up. That wattage is that hard limiter, but the brightness, you can play. And that does nothing to reflect the reality. So this is where Sony does its quote unquote magic. They put all of that energy and power into what they think your eyes find most engaging. Skin tones, brightness around the hair, the face. Background, they will dim down. Is that the right decision? Subjective. But that's what Sony has said they do. Other TV makers, fully balanced, right? But then to some people that feels kind of flat, but it's fully balanced, right? Other people will only choose specular highlights and really make that bright, and everything else dims down. So when you are engineering a TV, these are all decisions that each TV maker will decide. And this is why some TVs have a personality of their own. So hopefully, I mean, that's a little bit long-winded, but I think a lot of you don't realize this is how TVs and tone mapping, it's an art, not a science, right? You can't say, oh, why don't we tone map just like them? Maybe because the colorist at the TV maker feels that that's not important to tone map that way. And if you disagree, you get another TV, right? It's subjective. Okay, Samsung. We haven't mentioned Samsung in a while. Fomo, what can we expect from Samsung in 2026? Can they finally put their best processor on their QD-OLED? So the question is, let's start with flagship. Will it still be 8K? As you guys know, 8K is not a big seller. All predictions that 8K will be growing every year has completely been wrong. It's been shrinking every year. Samsung is literally the only TV maker in the world that still sells 8K TVs. And I think they might have 3 models this year, right? Like a top end, a mid end, and an entry level. But I don't understand why they do it. Okay, actually, you know what? I do understand why they do it. They want to give consumers a reason to pay more, right? It's all marketing. But as you know, if you put them side by side, it all looks the same. Even at an 85-inch size, it's all upscaling. And I don't think and it limits the brightness of the TV. That's the other issue with 8K. So the question is, can we expect 8K from Samsung in 2026? Man, they invested so much. I think they're going to try it again. So 8K in 2026. Definitely more aggressive marketing of the matte anti-glare. It's been a big hit for them. And can they finally put their best processor on their QD-OLED? No. I'll tell you why. You got the RGB MicroLED that's being released at the beginning of next year or sometime next year, right? RGB MicroLED. You have the 8K. Those two will get the best processor. They need to give you a reason to upgrade to get above QD-OLED. Because QD-OLED, we know it's premium, it's expensive. But like, yeah, but if people are going to pay twice as much, we got to reward them with something. And they're going to reward them with a quote unquote better processor. The truth is it really better? So let's take a step back. Christian, if it's literally the same processor and there's only one addition, one feature that the other processor is missing, and they'll just relabel that processor, oh, that's Gen 9 Alpha 22. Okay, technically it's better, but the reality is, for all intents and purposes, it's the same processor. Great marketing trick. So Christian, it's okay. Don't worry about it. The best processor, I think the S95 series will still get an adequate processor. What you're asking is whether Samsung will improve low bit rate processing on their mainstream TVs. That's not 8K and above. That's a different question because then you really have to test it. So I hope so. I can't predict they will or they won't. I hope so. It wouldn't surprise me if they don't. I think they're very comfortable with how well their processor is performing. That's not why people are not buying Samsung TVs. They're buying it they're choosing other brands for other reasons. So it should be okay. So what you're saying is Samsung wants to lose. Well, Samsung definitely wants to win, but I think they feel that they can move the market with specific features that are appealing. And I know people laugh. Well, here's an appealing feature and maybe the reason why people buy a Samsung TV. You're watching TV, you got a Samsung washer, and then suddenly a message pops up. Hey, we noticed your underwear is very dirty. Would you like to add extra bleach? And you're all embarrassed. Oh my God. But that's the stuff I'm talking about, right? Where there's this AI smart home, everything is connected, or the refrigerator message pops on your TV and hey, you're running out of celery, or hey, you're running out of meat, whatever it is, right? All of that Samsung is working on. And so these are the features why people buy Samsung TVs. Is this connected home, which kind of influences their decision making. Oh, should I buy a Samsung washer dryer? I have a matching TV. Oh, this feature is available. Nothing to do with image quality. Everything to do with quality of life and ownership experience. So Samsung wants to win that way. Or they have free fitness videos, right? Not a lot of people know this. Samsung Health is connected to your TV. So like Apple Fitness, which has a certain fee to watch the videos, on Samsung is completely free. So, go on Samsung, you have your watch, you're working out, it tells you how many calories you burn, you move on. That is how Samsung's going to win. They may lose the enthusiast, but they're going to win all the housewives and all the lazy husbands out there. And that might be enough to keep them in business. Add bleach or just return it to Wally World. You mean Walmart? All right. Let's see here. Oh my gosh, I've already been here for an hour. You guys are awesome. extra dirty. Let's not beat around the bush. They have skid marks, which takes me to the technical writers for these messages. Who is doing the English translations on these things, right? Would they use skid marks? So you're watching TV, skid marks alert. How much extra bleach? Like desanitize, right? Like you can have so much fun with this as a technical writer. And you know, the Korean HQ has no idea what's happening, right? So can you imagine the guys like having fun? Like, you know what? Yeah, let's call it, yeah, in the US we call it skid marks. It's a euphemism for dirty underwear. It's totally acceptable. I love it. No judgment, but I don't trust people who buy underwear from Walmart. Well, not after they return them. I'm never going to buy it there, that's for sure. Will we ever see a larger QD-OLED? So this goes to the larger question of, if a larger QD-OLED, so let's talk about the 77-inch QD-OLED, right? What's that? $5,000, 4,500, something like that. What is the size, the number of people willing to pay? So the 83-inch primary RGB G5 is like $6,500 right now. Let's assume for the sake of argument the larger QD-OLED is the same price, $6,500. How many people are willing to buy the $6,500 to justify tooling for that and selling enough of it, not just to Samsung Electronics, but to Sony and whoever, right? Right now it's just Sony and Samsung Electronics. And you know, Sony is going to be like $8,000, right? So you know, $7,500 from a Sony QD-OLED 83-inch, and at Samsung Electronics, same price as the G5, $6,500, something like that. Is the size of that group large enough to justify this entire tooling? Now, LG Display, you're saying, well, how come LG Display is doing it? Well, it's their company, and maybe they're not selling enough of those, right? Maybe that was a bad decision on their part. Maybe they're losing money on this Halo product. Maybe it's a lost leader. We don't know the situation. But it's not a large population, especially when you compete against a 100-inch mini LED for half the price that hits the quote-unquote 5,000 nit mark, right? So let's say $6,500 for 83-inch QD-OLED or primary RGB. And then at $3,000, you're going to get a QM8K, 5,000 nits, 98 inches, Black Friday. Here's your problem. You have real competitors. So I don't see larger QD-OLED. I see Samsung doing what it's doing now, which is just buying what LG Display offers them. And currently LG Display is offering them primary RGB OLED, and they're going to buy it and they're going to use it because now if sales go out of control, oh my gosh, we're selling them out the door, right? Inventory stock is low all the time. We might see it, but until that happens, right, my friends, start buying all the Samsung 83 inches, just buy it off stock, and maybe once they're out of stock, next year we'll see it. But it's definitely, they're tracking how many sales, and if the sales aren't great, not happening. Can we expect improved anti-glare next year? Well, considering this year is improved, I'm talking about the matte coating. The matte anti-glare coating this year, definitely better than last year. I compared it, shine the flashlight, S95D, S95F. The 90D had these weird lines when a bright light's on it. I mean, it's very subtle, but it's very visible. On the S95F, it's a smoother glow. The glow is less intense. They did a better job this year dispersing the brightness and didn't have those weird artifacts. That's the nature of the first generation coating. So next year, I expect a little bit more incremental improvement, right? But at some point, you're going to hit, point of diminishing returns. Oh, you know what? It's really good now. We don't need to do anything. So it may improve a little bit next year, but for sure, it's pretty close to where it should be. Because otherwise, it's like not having anti-glare at all. You might as well just go semi-gloss. And online services. Question for Fomo. What do you recommend as a good bridge TV waiting for the C6? QM6K, diminishing returns. Get a large QM6K because you get immersion. In my opinion, immersion is the biggest improvement if you're coming from an older TV and you want to upgrade, right? So let's say you're coming from an LCD TV 5 years old, 55 inches. Going to 75 inches QM6K, you'll be so happy. And then when the C6 releases and it's exactly what you want, you go 77 inch, it's an extra 2 inches. So it's slightly bigger, but you get that infinite contrast, or 83 inch even. Yeah, I definitely go with a QM6K if you're coming from an older LCD TV. Or any LCD TV within the last few years. The QM6K is that good. Now, if you're coming from an OLED, you will notice a slight drop in contrast, but the size will make up the difference. So if you're coming from a 55-inch OLED, going to a 75, 85-inch QM6K, I still think it's worth it. Because that immersion, you're going to forget slight loss in contrast. And the skin tones on this, the accuracy, short of your old TV being perfectly calibrated, the QM6K Filmmaker mode, it's pretty rock solid. Yeah, near black, there's still that touch of that red saturation, oversaturation on the QM6K, but it feels like TCL is addressing it with every firmware update. They're working on it, right? Like the QM8K is not even there anymore. So, but that's not to assume it's not there, but in a bright room watching most content, you will not notice it. I would say yes, get the QM6K as the large TV Band-Aid, and you'll be thrilled. And AI dev. Hey, are you really an AI dev? Are you real? Hey, Fomo, just a stupid question. Do you think the Panasonic Z95B is going to be better than the LG G5 in shadow detail? The answer is maybe. This is why. I had the Z95A. I liked it a lot. Its strength, though, was color saturation, HDR, impact. It was all the bright stuff. The dark stuff looked good, but I was testing the bright stuff. Now the Z95B, know that they have a team from Hollywood that they retained to tune this TV. With that in mind, I would err on the side of saying yes, because this team is pretty competent, right? They're pretty well known. I forgot the name, but they retained one of the top colorist studios in Hollywood to tune the Z95B. And with that in mind, I will give them the benefit of the doubt and say it should be better, should be. The question is, will it? And once I get it, we'll test it. And by that time, who knows, maybe the next firmware update will fix everything left that's slight flaws, a little crushing still. Or not crushing per se, but slightly darker than it should be. Okay, this is a good question. Does Samsung really have bad upscaling? I was comparing SDR content in store with a store employee and found the S95F and G5 were equal in terms of upscaling, and this is my point. So, and this is something that I've discussed with the judges at the shootout, before the shootout, after the shootout, the organizers, and I'm like, when you're watching content and you have to re-watch that content in slow motion, freeze, and then squint, and spend 10 minutes doing that, and then finally come up with a winner that is maybe 1 point better than the other one, it's too close to call. Now, these are judges, these are calibrators, right? The normal person, it's pointless, and then it goes to scoring anything, right? When you score something, whether it's 1 through 10, 1 through 5, doesn't matter. What is the true separation between a 9 and an 8? 9 and a 7. Now, a 9 and a 0, obviously. 9 and a 2, right? At some point, though, 9 and a 7, 7.5, at some point in a moving picture, it becomes pointless. Where is that point? If you have to freeze it and then say, aha, I see it, but then when it's moving and you don't, arguably, you may say, you know what, I'm paying an extra $1,000. It's worth it for me because when I freeze it, I want to know I got the best. Completely understand. But if you're trying to save a few bucks, definitely not worth it. And so you're right, Wesley. If you didn't freeze it, and even if you did, and you go, aha, I can hunt this down, right? This guy's, there's an extra pixel that shouldn't be there. But when it's moving around and you can't see it, does it matter, right? If you cannot see that superior upscaling, does it matter? And I've come to the point where 5 years ago, this when it's between a 9 and a 7, you could see it. But if every TV keeps on improving, that 9 and 7, I think the separation becomes less and less noticeable. But I just, I'm having a hard time seeing the differences being distinguishable 3 years from now. I mean, I'm already having a hard time today. I cannot imagine what it will be like in 3 years once everyone understands, all the brands understands how to upscale. I mean, at what point is a 9.5 or a 7.5 good enough? Like, how do you scale? Because it's all relative, right? If the worst TV is awesome, but you still got to give the worst TV a relative score of 5, or is it an absolute score, right? Are we thinking absolute score? Are we thinking relative score? And the score is still subjective at the end of the day. Are we counting pixels? Okay, it's got 5 pixels off. Each pixel represents 0.5 points off. I do not envy ratings. Scoring, weighting, there is no right answer, but I do not envy the way they approach it because I cannot criticize what they do. It is so hard to come up with a scoring system because if they said to me, well, can you do better? The answer is absolutely not. I wouldn't do it at all. You guys are nuts. But it's easy for me subjectively to say, oh, I can't tell the difference. 7, 8, 9 is all the same to me. I got bad eyes, whatever, right? So Wesley, to your point, if you can't tell, save money, get the cheaper TV. Because at the end of the day, that's what counts, right? If you can see it, that's the difference. Because I know there are some people here that can see it. Like, oh, I can see all those things. Not me. It's like hi-fi audio. There are people, oh, I could hear frequency 3000 and it's a little bit too high, right? It's not flat enough. I gotta EQ that out. I'm like, man, how can you tell it's not the source? I mean, but there are people that are very sensitive. Like I'm very sensitive to stutter, right? If I see it, like, you know what? Let's change that. I can't stand that. So we all have our quirks. And if your quirk is upscaling, low bit rate, you kind of see those aberrations, I get it. Get the best processor you can. But if you can't see it, oh, you just saved yourself a whole lot of money. Jeremy Boone, I thought you were doing a video on the QM7K. Is that still happening? Oh, wait. You mean this one? Like right here that I am showing off right now? This one? Where, unfortunately, if you missed, I'm going to catch you all up. I had the U7K or U7Q unboxed. And then I discovered, wait, where's the bag that has the manual, the remote, the power cable, the screws? Like, okay, I cannot, like, it's okay if it didn't have the screws. I have screws, right? I could hang it up, whatever. It didn't have a power cable, and it didn't have a remote. It's like, wait, I can't do this. So I reached out to Hisense and said, guys, you could FedEx me the manual bag, whatever, and then I'll do it, or just replace the TV, up to you, whatever. So they'll let me know on Monday what happens. So yeah, sorry, Jeremy, this was like a last minute change because the unboxing revealed that I was missing the accessories bag. Didn't even have the manual. Not like I needed it, but can't do it without it. iCipher. Fomo, what would you rather have in a dark room from 8-foot viewing distance? 8 foot, okay. 83-inch OLED or 98-inch mini LED? Absolutely. In a dark room, man, I do want to go with a 98-inch. Use case is Netflix and console gaming. Okay. With gaming, I would go with the 83-inch OLED. I don't want any chance of any issues with gaming. 98-inch mini LED, it really depends. Choose the right TV, make sure it's got the right latency and the color, and it doesn't shut off. Tone mapping, I mean, all these things happen in mini LED in game mode. Does not happen on an OLED. Almost any OLED will do this well. So with the 83-inch and console gaming is, let's say 30%, I would take the 83-inch. And 8 feet from 83 is fine. I mean, this is as small as I would get from 8 feet. Ideally, I would go 98. If you took out not console gaming and it's just Netflix, I'd go with the mini LED. But if console gaming is, you're kind of sensitive to motion and all of that, yeah, I'd take the 83-inch whatever, B4, because that doesn't make a difference to me. So, yep, let me know what you end up buying, iCipher. Confirmed. Fomo wants his entire wall filled as a TV. As a matter of fact, yes, I have a short throw, and it does fill up my entire wall. It's, once you hit 110 inches on a short throw, it's really hard to go back. And you guys know a short throw is not excellent image quality. It's good enough, right? Because it's about immersion. Because I watch Netflix on it. It's just fine, absolutely fine. Well, and not only that, my family prefers it. So I get outvoted every time. Hey, you guys want the short throw or this? I don't even get to finish the question because I know the alternative is a 65 or a 77 inch. Nope, short throw. So there it is. Is the A95 still in the conversation? If it's cheaper than the Bravia 8 Mark II for the same size, yeah, save some money. It's very similar. But if you need it for bright sports, the A95L simply does not get as bright. But then again, at that price, might as well go with the G5 for bright sports. And so that's why the Bravia 8 Mark II, yes, it has the Sony processing. So if you prefer a Sony, but it only goes up to 65 inches. So A95L is relevant for the 77-inch fan. If you need 77 inches, A95L is the only way to go. So it's relevant there. But 55 and 65, unless it's like a few $100s more cheaper, I'd still go with a Bravia 8 Mark II. And then pay the extra $60 for a backlit remote. How was Father's Day at the movies? I did go. I went and saw How to Train a Dragon. I thought F1 was playing, but it wasn't. It's not playing until this weekend, right? So, yeah. So I saw the original How to Train Your Dragon. We even saw the musical on ice when the kids were young. And I thought it was fine, right? You can go with the kids. It could have been better, but it's a time out with the family. So yeah, How to Train a Dragon was where I went, and it was good stuff. Okay, let me see. I think it's good to ask your questions. We're going to wrap up in 5 minutes. So thank you everyone for dropping by. Just looking through your questions real quick here. If I missed your questions, keep on asking again. Did LG fix HDR on G5? They fixed the contouring issues and the stuff that a lot of reviewers had a problem with. I think the green tint was addressed. It's a little bit better. Actually, it's a lot better. And I believe the dark crushing, it's not as bad, but it's still too dark. So it's not crushing per se, but the shadow is a bit darker than it should be. I think they need to focus on that on the next firmware update, which they'll get right. Let's see what else. But otherwise, it's still a great TV. I'd still buy it even without the fix, but now with the fix, it's that much better. But definitely Dolby Vision, HDR10, a little bit darker than they should be in the shadow detail right now. However, with dynamic tone mapping activated in a bright room, irrelevant. It's in darkroom watching, filmmaker mode that this is an issue. All right, Reap. FOMO, any suggestions for settings on S95F watching sports, NBA, and notice motion stutter glitching? So, assuming you're watching sports in standard, there should be no motion stutter glitching. If you're watching in Filmmaker, adding motion interpreter causes other issues and can't find a sweet spot settings in Filmmaker mode. Okay, so try standard mode and put your color temperature to warm 2. It's not exactly Filmmaker mode, D65, but it gets it warmer. So try that. In Filmmaker mode, oh man, what I normally do is I put motion interpolation 5, 4 or 5, and I'm fine with it. But if you're sensitive to the stutter and glitching in sports, and it's kind of like something that you see, that's a hard one because Samsung only has so many settings, and putting anti-judder to, going up and up and up, right? So 4 or 5 is not smooth enough. 4 or 5 should remove stutter, by the way. Glitching is something else. That could be well, first of all, is it the source? If the source has frame drops, not necessarily your TV, but you're streaming, the TV cannot fix that. So if the source is adding the stutter or the glitch because they're panning too quickly, and no TV is going to be able to address that adequately. So it could also be the source, whether it's cable broadcast or YouTube TV, it doesn't matter. Your TV can only do so much. So the question is, who's at fault? I have found that Samsung to be good enough for sports, especially if you take anti-jitter 4, 5, 6, or put it in standard mode and see how the sports is, and put it in auto, standard mode, auto, or dynamic mode, auto. Let Samsung do its thing, and if it doesn't work out, then you go in and hand tune it. And then you can always take warm too to kind of give it a bit more skin tone. But beware that sometimes the motion stutter and glitching is a source problem, and getting a new TV doesn't solve it. Like, wait a minute, I just bought a Sony, it looks exactly the same. So best to take, if you have that source and it's consistent, bring it to a TV dealer, whoever, and plug it in to the TVs that you think could be better and see if it glitches there. But I do not use Filmmaker mode for sports watching just because a lot of TVs, it's not bright enough, right? I need it to be brighter because I'll be watching in a bright room when I'm doing sports a lot of the time. So, okay. Oh, look at that. Got 2 more super chats before I head out. Thanks, iCypher. Thank you for answering so many questions today. You're welcome. And what a great way to wrap up a wonderful Sunday. First thing I do when I buy a TV, go to motion settings and turn them off. Stutter. You are unlike me at all. Did that with the QM8. It's slightly jerky and still a little soapy. Never had that problem with Sony. Samsung, LG TVs help. Okay, Christian. So let's talk about this. First of all, no TV can be disabled completely. So let's get that out of the way. Even if you set it to 0, even if you turn it off, there's always some kind of motion processing. It must be done. It's just how low do they go? We'll start with Sony. Sony believes that this is complete BS. No one wants it off because it looks like crap. So Sony will have what they feel is the minimum processing that's acceptable to most people. Anything less, no one will find it pleasant. And if you don't like it, go buy another TV. So with Sony, setting it to minimum, notice in Sony it's not called 0 or off, it's called min, M-I-N. It still looks pretty good. And a lot of people like that, but there's still a little processing. That's how Sony does it. Me, I still push it up to 1. Even that, I still have some stutter. So on a Sony, I still have it at 1 in their professional mode. On the Samsung, I have it at 3 for movie watching. On LG, I have it at 2 or 3, but I definitely don't have it at 0. On the QM8, every year the TV changes, literally, in terms of how their settings work. So if it's a QM8, not QM8K, you're going to have to get away from 0 because TCL may have taken it literally. Oh, they don't want any processing. Let's just reduce it to the bare minimum, right? QM8, you might have to be at a 4. Like I know on the Hisense, I'm around a 4. Not to say the two are the same, but Hisense is similar to TCL. They take things literally. Oh, Filmmaker mode means completely off. So let's try to do that. And it's terrible. Like, guys, Tom Cruise did not mean no motion processing at all. It's like herky-jerky across the room. So, Christian, if you have a TCL or Hisense, I'd say start at 4. And if it's too soapy, then you take it down to 3 and so forth. Or you take it up. But if you start at 4 and you go down, you should be okay. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I know that unlike Sony, the other brands, or unlike Sony, Samsung and LG. LG has great settings as well. Unlike Sony, Samsung, and LG, TCL and Hisense still don't know what motion settings people want. They just give you the entire gamut that's available and you can play with it. But the reality is it is an art to have the settings in the right place, and people prefer to have it preset correctly out of the box. No one wants to tune. Okay, when you guys look at the motion setting, like what the hell does Judder mean? Other than you guys hanging out with me kind of know what Judder is, right? But does Judder even make sense as a word? Like Judder, what is that? Like stutter doesn't help, right? Changing the term means nothing. Motion blur is even worse. Like, do I want motion blur? Is it bad? Is it good? So people need to, the technical writers need to come up with a better term that's a bit more obvious, normal person, a lay person can understand, because the word judder, stutter, and motion blur does not make sense in the context of, I just want motion that I like, right? So that'll be interesting how that ends up. All right, we'll take a few more questions and then I'll be off for this weekend. Heartless, Gonna buy my first OLED TV for gaming, 55-inch. Which one should I buy? Get the S90F. S90F doesn't have anti-glare. If you're in a dark room, it's perfect. If you're in a slightly brighter but with glare all around you, you might want to consider the S95F. S95F is a little bit more expensive. It's a little bit brighter, but I think an S90F is a good sweet spot. It's my editor's choice after all. And gaming, I think it's very solid for gaming at the 55-inch size, and it's a good price, right? You're not overpaying for a flagship. So yes, I recommend the S90F. Good value for gaming. And oh, Hayden finally saw the S95F versus the Bravia 8 Mark II in person. I prefer gloss over matte as well as QD-OLED. What's the best 77 and 65? Use case Apple TV and Blu-ray. 77-inch, you got the S90F and you got the S95F. S95F is technically the best from Samsung. It's the brightest. It's got everything, the anti-glare. You like gloss though, so you're going to have to go with the S90F. S90F 77-inch performs very similarly to last year's S95D, which I loved. So I would recommend the 77-inch S90F. Would look great with Apple TV and Blu-ray. You just have to be okay not having Dolby Vision. I am. I don't think it's a big deal. But if Dolby Vision is a thing for your family, then you have the LG. See, you like gloss. So LG G5, 77-inch, and Sony A95L, 77-inch. Both do Dolby Vision. Already talking about the C6. Yes, we are. Let me put this up. Yes, we are. Panasonic Xenia 5B will outperform the LG G5. I think so. I think so. I could be wrong. I don't get choppy video on LG OLED. Again, with low motion processing turned on, can't remember the exact numbers. I guess some brands do it better. Still no soap opera. Yeah, for me, LG at a 2 to 3, probably 3. It gets rid of the stutter, and I'm okay with a touch of soap that's, to me, not noticeable. Classy notices soap opera. He's very sensitive to it. He cannot handle an LG at 3. He's more like a 1. But again, there's no right answer, right? You have to find the reviewer that has the same taste as you in soap opera, anti-stutter. S90F over the A95L? I would. Yes. Okay. What is FOMO? What is FOMO smoking there? Need a pull. I'm supposed to be blowing the smoke off of my pistol finger. I cannot even get into that comment. I might get canceled by YouTube. Like, hey, no talking about drugs and over medication with the children watching, right? All right, El Chefe, I think this is a great way to wrap it up. I work at Best Buy and love all the new OLEDs. However, will you do a review of the new LG QNED lineup? No, and I'll tell you why. LG, Samsung to a certain degree, but LG mostly, they've left LCD TV technology behind. For them, even their best QNED is a mid-tier QNED. And given the price, it's hard for me to justify encouraging people to consider it when a similarly priced QM6K, QM7K, QM8K, right? Dollar for dollar, for content watching, I find TCL and Hisense to offer better value, better image quality. Now, on the flip side though, the LG QNED may be a better gaming machine. I'm talking about just regular content watching and streaming. As a gaming TV, it'll have probably better thought out implementation. The problem is though, if you're a serious gamer, then you would not consider QNED, you consider OLED, because an 85-inch QNED, although probably cheaper than 83-inch OLED, it's still their mid-tier QNED. It's just really hard for me to get behind what LG is doing with this QNED. But that's kind of like my personal opinion based on what I saw at LG. I don't have the TV here to compare. It's just I don't have the heart to do it, because then if it ends up looking terrible, I don't want to be the guy, oh, I told you so, right? I'm like, I'll let someone else do that. Ratings, be my guest. Please review the QNED. But at the end of the day, I like reviewing TVs that I really think will succeed. Now, I could be disappointed, but based on the effort and the specs that they put into it, it feels like the TV is intended to do well. And for me, that's exciting, rather than mailing it in, right? Oh, we need to fill in this LCD TV lineup. They just throw that out there. And for the last few years, that's what it felt like LG did with their QNED TVs. This is a great way to end it. Liberty Hour. How do you keep the lenses of your glasses so clean and free of reflections? My friend, with a microfiber cloth. But right now. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I love you, my friends. Okay, well, with that, I want to wish you all a wonderful Sunday, wonderful weekend. The next live stream will be either, I promise you, a U7K or U7Q. I keep calling it U7. Hisense U7Q or Panasonic Z95B or Bravia 9 versus, you guessed it, TCL QM8K. One of those three, depending which one comes in first. I'll make it happen. And yeah, in the meantime, enjoy yourself, enjoy your friends, enjoy your family. Until next time, my friends, stop the FOMO.